All right, you ready to roll? Okay, thank you for coming. As more than one person has pointed out to me this evening, the Saints play tonight. I think kickoff is at 7:15. I can promise you, those of you who want to see the Saints game can leave at 6:30, 6:15, 6, whatever you'd like. And there always seems to be somebody at the very end who says, you know, I have 3 questions. And everybody gives a group sigh. So if we have somebody like that, I'll stick around and answer their questions, and you can call me periodically and give me the Saints score, okay? If you have not signed in, please sign in before you leave, just so I'll know who was here and be able to get a count. And if you do not get my Ward 5 weekly e-blast on Sunday mornings, if you'd like to get it, give me your email address beside your name. Just about, I mean, for the folks I recognize in here, you already get the blast, but some of you may not. This meeting will be videotaped by the Public Affairs Department for the City of Biloxi, and later it will be posted online, perhaps as early as this evening. We'll see. I would remind our folks who are speaking tonight, if you would, just speak from the podium so that it's recorded on the video. And if somebody has a question, if you're answering that question, or when you answer that question, please repeat the question, because they don't have microphones. That being said, I would like to start our meeting, and first I would like to introduce our state representative for District 117, Mr. Kevin Felsher. Mr. Felsher, if you'd like to make a few comments, you could, but you have to come to the podium.
Sure, I'll come to the podium. Just like in high school.
Just like in high school.
First of all, thank y'all for coming out tonight and being civically involved. Much appreciated. It's an honor to be your representative. What I'll do, so I don't kind of hijack Dr. Tisdale's meeting, I'm going to come around and try to give each and every one of you a card. If you have any questions, you can call me or email me. But if you do have any state-related questions at this time, I could try to field them best I could. So does anyone have any questions from a state level? Okay, just so you know, coming into office, my intent has been to work with the City of Biloxi hand in hand best that I possibly can. I think Vincent will tell you I'm at least up there once a week, making sure that if the mayor has any needs from a state level, that I can try to work with them in conjunction with Senator Delano and Senator Carter to try to help them with that. Same with the Biloxi school systems. In touch with Superintendent Boudreau probably once a month at least. I have an open line of communications with him. And so readily accessible. If any of you need anything, please call me or email me. I will come by and give you a card before I leave. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Kevin. At this point, I know Mike Leonard is here, and Mr. Leonard, who's the Chief Administrative Officer for the City of Biloxi, he's the guy who cracks the whip citywide. I have a couple of topics here for you to cover, Mike, but it's your turn to come up. Well, I know, but I want everybody to be able to watch the Saints kickoff tonight.
Let me make this very brief. We have finished 2020, fiscal year 2020. Thank the Lord. It has been a rough year. The roughest part of it was that when we got the $5 million deduction of revenue from the casinos, we went through 2.5 months of no revenue from our number one revenue source, $5 million that we're missing. It happened in the last quarter of the year. And those of you that are business people, I'm sure, actually about anybody can figure this one out. You get the bill at the end, you're about to finish the year, and you have 3 months to make up $5 million. It was tough. The mayor told us the only 2 things that he needed to be restricted. He didn't want to have to raise taxes, and he didn't want anybody to lose their job. Well, that was 2 pretty tough standards to meet. And what we did was we refinanced a lot of our debt, including the baseball park. We did a hiring freeze. We did a travel freeze. We went into the budgets and cut all the departments. That's why they're not my friends anymore. All the departments' budgets in that last 90 days, and we coasted across the finish line in the positive territory. I didn't think we were going to make it, to tell you the truth, because it was a tough go in there for a while. The good news is, of course, we're having a quote-unquote V-shaped return. As quickly as the revenues and sales tax and gaming tax went down, they're coming right back up, and we're sitting about 90. We're running about 90% right now, 90% of what our original budget was last year. So, and that's about the way we budgeted for this 2021. So we're pretty comfortable that we're not going to have those kind of crazy things happen. Of course, on the other hand, I'm getting a little grief that the employees are reading that Gulfport gave a 4% pay raise, and Harrison County gave a 4% pay raise, and Biloxi gave a 0% pay raise. But there's still some options to do something about that before this year is over. But one of the things that you see in your home is that your utility cost went up a little bit. The water bill went up by 2%, and it will go up 2% per year for the next 4 years. We have a dozen or so elevated tanks, a number of ground tanks, miles and miles of pipe, pumping stations, wells, all of which we not only have to charge enough to operate them, but we have to charge enough to repair them and maintain them. I'll give you a good example of what we are going to be able to do this year. Here in this part of town, there are 3 wells. One of them went dry almost a decade ago, so we've been limping around with 2 wells. At one point, we had a little problem with one of those wells, and we had just 1 well on for all of West Biloxi. We have the money in the budget and a contract being negotiated today to replace that well that went dry. It's about $1 million to drill a well, a deep well like your wonderful water comes from. So we have an opportunity to put that well in, and it's right behind the Bay Vista Fire Station, is where the well is that went dry a decade ago. So and the other thing is that we are pushing a lot of water out to Will Market, water and sewer services, to areas that we annexed 15 or more years ago and still don't have water and sewer. But we are really beginning to get at that now. And we've got several large projects going that are pushing water out to areas that haven't seen it. I talk about West Biloxi a lot. West Biloxi to me is the forgotten part of Biloxi. We've got a near $300 million project going in East Biloxi. That's if you had the opportunity to drive down on some of the areas in the East Biloxi, you're seeing neighborhoods with beautifully paved streets and new water and sewer and storm drain, and they look better than I can remember them ever looking. In Wool Market, we're developing like crazy, and as these new developments are built, they all have underground utilities. They all have new utility services, and so little bit by little bit, Wool Market is really coming around, and here we got West Biloxi, some of the oldest infrastructure underground in the city. Some of it predates annexation. In fact, a lot of it predates annexation. In the Tanglewood area, just down from us here, we've got pipes, water pipes that have got more patches on them than they've got pipe, and it's old asbestos pipe. Not unsafe, but still, it's a pipe that needs to be replaced. And we've got a $1 million project going there that's starting just any day now. So we're going to try and do more out here in West Biloxi. Councilman Tisdale has been very aggressive at trying to get money for Ward 5. And we got a good start this year. We did a lot of work here at the Snyder Sr, new chiller, fences and so forth, the Churchill ditch, the Palm, help me, Paul, the other big drainage project, Pine Grove ditches. Yeah.
Down the center of the street.
So we're beginning to focus, and I promise you we'll do more in West Biloxi in the coming year than we have done in times past. It's we haven't raised, Paul, Paul would be an expert on this one. We haven't raised ad valorem tax rates for 26 years now. And that's pretty amazing, actually. There may come a time they're going to have to do that, but if the revenues continue to be solid, and if this new Broadwater project really does happen, that's going to be a boon to us. So we're always waiting for you at City Hall to call in your issues. Work with your councilman. You've got a great councilman who looks after the board very, very well. So if you can't get what you can't from Paul, push it on up the line. We'll see what we can do, or he'll push it up the line. Thanks for your time tonight. And I'm lucky in my job. I kid about people say that my job is the guy with the shovel behind the parade, cleaning up the messes. In fact, I don't have to clean a lot of messes up because we've got a wonderful group of directors that are all real pros. So I'll turn the floor over to them.
Two more topics if you'd cover briefly.
DeBees Road is a really fun one. Yeah, DeBees Road is a real fun one. Almost 6 months ago, we wrote a letter to Billy Hughes and said, Mayor Hughes, you own half of DeBees Road. How'd you like to pay for half of it? No answer. So a month ago, we wrote again to him and also to Connie Rocco and said, we'll run the project, but how about splitting the cost? I mean, it is half your street. Still no answer, but we're going to keep pushing on DeBees Road because now that work on the college is finished, it's time for something to happen. And the other half of that, of course, is the new road.
Jerry will get to that.
Good. Jerry's going to get to that. Okay, good. What was the other one I missed?
The other one is the Popsbury P3 project, just an overview of 25 words on it.
Yeah. We're meeting with MDOT, Mississippi Department of Transportation in Jackson the last week of October. We will be doing the final review of our alignment, our roadwork alignment, going across the bridge and around to go to the four-lane entrance and exit off the bridge. Our problem is we've spent on the Pops Ferry extension almost $6 million buying the land, and we're still waiting for a grant to build the road. It's submitted for the Gulf Coast Restoration Fund this way, and I haven't told you this, Paul, but I've got comments back from some of the people on the board that they're normally not positive about transportation projects, but they like the job creation aspect of that job, so we might get that grant. The bridge, on the other hand, is $125 million. We're not going to get a bridge without some federal help, so we're going to meet with MDOT. We're asking them to move some of the money that we have remaining left into property acquisition so that we can start buying up properties along the road. We actually have to buy 69 residences on Pops Ferry Road in order to build a four-lane bridge. So that means from the bridge all the way to Margaret Cherry, pretty much every house on one side of the road is going to get bought in order to do that project. Huge effort. We've talked to a company and gotten interest from another of their competitors to build a for-profit bridge, if you will, a toll bridge. Now, I don't know about you, but my feeling is a toll bridge is not going to sell. I'm not paying $10 to go to Home Depot. I just don't think it's going to work. But we've gone through the traps to find out, what would the toll be, how long, because the bridge could be ready in 2 years if we go privatization, but I just don't think it's going to sell. As a Biloxi resident, I'm saying, how'd Gulfport get a free bridge and we have to pay for one? So anyway, that's something that'll come to you all at some point to comment on. But we are looking at the capability of doing perhaps a for-profit bridge. In the meantime, we're working as hard as we can with Senator Wicker. Senator Wicker is on the Transportation Committee in the Senate, and so he's pretty good leverage. So we're trying to work them for some kind of a federal grant to get that bridge built. So that is such a critical aspect of letting Biloxi grow. The more Biloxi grows over on the other side, and the more it grows over here in West Biloxi, the more that bridge is going to become just a terrible handicap for us. And the older it gets, you see almost once a week, it seems like, it's not as often as once a week, that the bridge gets stuck, the arms get stuck, the locking mechanism gets stuck. And whenever we have a hurricane, it's white knuckle time, because we don't know if we're going to be able to get the bridge up and often enough to get the marine traffic through and so forth. So I think probably the Pops Ferry Bridge and Pops Ferry Extension is our #1 city problem right now for the future. So that's kind of, did I get that?
Yeah, that's just
I
a
get-
brief overview. I know we're early.
Did I get at least a C-, Professor? Okay, thank you.
Did well enough.
Paul and I grew up in the same neighborhood.
Thank you, Mr. Leonard. I didn't see Christy Kelly Hicks come in. She spoke, I think, last year about this time on the census. And I tried to get in touch with her since we rescheduled this meeting and never heard back from her. So she may walk in later, may not. I kind of think she won't. Next on the agenda is community development with Mr. Jerry Creel.
Thank you and good evening. A couple of topics I'm supposed to cover tonight. One has to do with the Mississippi Gulf Coast College Road, the proposed road that would come from the college off of DeBees Road and come around and come out there somewhere near Mississippi Music Building. I can tell you we've received no plans. We've had no meetings in the last couple of years with any of the officials of the community college. At the last meeting we had with them, we expressed to them the concerns of some of the neighbors about that road going in, and they were actually showed some willingness to actually meet with the neighbors on those properties whenever they do get to a point where the road is actually becoming a reality. My guess is, and this is just my personal opinion, is that what they were trying to do was to finish up the new boulevard from the Perkinston campus. If you've been over on Highway 49 lately, you'll notice they've just put in a boulevard coming from the campus directly out to Highway 49, and they're not finished with that yet, although it is being used right now. They're supposed to put in a new sign there and do some other things, and it's my personal opinion that probably what they were doing was trying to finish that up before they start to consider the road that we're talking about now that would come down to Pass Road. At that meeting, they were very open. They said, we'll be happy to have a meeting with the neighbors whenever we get to that point, but we're just not ready to do that right now. So I guess the short answer is we have nothing. They presented nothing to us, and when they do, they'll have to go through a process. We can make that information public, through email or one of our mediums, our news mediums, to let the neighbors know what's going on, that it is going to be on the DRC agenda. And a lot of what happens after that will depend on whether or not they're wanting to build that road and then have the city take over the maintenance on it. We don't know that yet because we're just not that far along. The next topic that we were going to discuss has to do with short-term rental. As you know, we've been back and forth about short-term rental, and the city administration and the council have taken the position that they would not allow short-term rental in single-family residentially zoned properties. So it's not allowed if the property is zoned single-family residential. It is allowed as a conditional use on property that's zoned multifamily residential. That would be RM20 and RM30. It's allowed as a conditional use. What that means is that if someone wants to do short-term rental in one of those zones, they still have to come in and go through the planning commission and through the city council in order to get approval. Some have been passed, some have not been passed. It just really depends on whether or not the planning commission and the council feel that the location is appropriate. The other option has to do with commercially zoned properties. And if someone's trying to do short-term rental on a piece of property that is zoned commercial, one of the commercial zonings that allows a hotel as a use by right, then short-term rental is allowed as a use by right in those zones. We do have one commercial zoning, and that's NB neighborhood business where it's allowed as a conditional use. Again, meaning that it would have to go to the Planning Commission and to the City Council to get approval. Right now, we have a little over 300 short-term rentals that are licensed in the city. We monitor those all the time. Whenever it does get approval, we report that information to the Hotel Motel Association, and they help us to monitor them to make sure that they're paying the taxes that they're supposed to be making. We do have, or we were working today to schedule a workshop. The City Council, we had taken some proposed changes to the Planning Commission and to the City Council that would increase the licensing fee for short-term rentals, and also would require them to provide some additional information before we would allow them to renew their license that they'd already received. That was tabled subject to a workshop, and we're working on that workshop right now. It has tentatively been scheduled for 10:30 on Tuesday, the 27th. It would be that morning before the regular council meeting that would be held that afternoon. And we have both Linda Hornsby from the Hotel Motel Association that would come and actually answer some of the questions that the council would have, and also a representative from the Mississippi Department of Revenue that would come and answer questions about how these taxes are monitored. There are several different ways that taxes get paid. If a short-term rental registers with VRBO or Airbnb, in some cases, those agencies would pay the taxes. They would collect the taxes and then pay the taxes back to the Department of Revenue. In some cases, though, the responsibility falls on the individual short-term rental owner to pay their taxes. And these are questions that we haven't been able to get a real clear answer about, and that was one of the purposes for having the workshop, was so that we could get people in there who could answer those questions. So that's kind of where we are with short-term rental. We have a case coming to the City Council in one of the next meetings for Mr. Zane, who just built an apartment complex on Briarfield and was able to get approval to do short-term rental out of that apartment complex, and had come back with an application for another apartment complex on the other side of the road, and that was denied by the Planning Commission. That request was denied, and it was scheduled to come to the City Council, but the applicant had asked that it be postponed for a couple of weeks to allow him to put together some more information that was needed. So that denial, that Planning Commission's recommended denial, will be coming before the City Council in one of their next meetings. And that's kind of where we are with short-term rental. Okay. Okay. Well, for those of you who don't know what I do, I'm Jerry Creel, and I oversee the Community Development Department, and we do a number of things. We oversee a number of things there. We oversee zoning matters and building permit matters, historical preservation, floodplain enforcement, code enforcement. If you're having problems in your neighborhood with something, you call us and we go out and investigate it. We do the business licenses out of our department. We oversee the visitor center. We oversee the civic center, and just a number of those things. Anything that falls within the purview of community development, zoning, and permitting falls under our department. So if you have any questions, you're welcome to call me or call our department. We'll gladly investigate it for you. We have a number of projects that we're working on right now, development projects, some that we've just finished up. Care if I go into that just a little bit? Okay. We've just recently completed the new Shipley Donuts on Pops Ferry Road. We've issued a temporary certificate of occupancy to the new Legends Hotel downtown. If you haven't been in there, it's worth a trip just to walk in and take a look at what they did on the inside of that building. That's the former Santa Maria del Mar, and they spared no expense. I tell you, it's absolutely gorgeous on the inside. They have a very fine supper club on the inside, but it's worth a trip down there just to walk in and take a look. We issued a temporary certificate of occupancy to the Go-Kart track on Veterans Boulevard, the Big Play Go-Kart track. We issued that last week. We're working on a number of projects right now. You're probably familiar with the Blake on Pops Ferry Road. We're actually working to finish up the Biloxi High School Performing Arts Center. The people who did the Legends Hotel, they pull their people off of them. They also own the Margaritaville, and they pull their people off the Margaritaville amusement park to go finish up Legends to get it open. And now they're going to turn their focus back to the Margaritaville amusement park and parking deck down there. We have the new main branch of Community Bank going on downtown. We've got the RW RV Park on Veterans Avenue. All of these are under construction. The Camp David RV Park on Cedar Lake Road. The Char restaurant that's relocating from Ocean Springs over into what used to be the Mardi Gras Museum in downtown Biloxi. They're working on that right now. Souvenir City just built a new warehouse behind their existing building. Of course, the Sanger Theater restoration, phase 1 of the Biloxi mausoleums at the old Biloxi Cemetery, the new Marshall Funeral Home on Veterans, and of course the Keesler Gate on Division Street, that area through there. What we did with that, and I think this is noteworthy, is that when the construction started on that section of Division Street, it occurred to us that as they went in and tore down some of those houses or relocated some of those houses and started construction on the actual road, that once that construction started, those houses and buildings that were actually behind that area where Division Street's being improved were actually going to become the face of Division Street. So we wanted to make sure that people weren't able to just throw up anything through there. So we had that area declared a design review district. It's an architectural historical design review district, meaning that any exterior improvements to existing buildings or any new construction going in on that stretch of Division Street from I-110 all the way to the new roundabout at the Keesler Gate would have to go through the Architectural Historical Review Commission to obtain approval. So we think that's going to really help us protect the look of what goes in along that area. One of the things that we're really excited about right now is single-family residential in Biloxi. We have 22 subdivisions, single-family residential subdivisions that are under construction. We have over 200 houses that are under construction in those 22 subdivisions. And you know, when you're going out and you're trying to recruit development projects to come to a city, one of the things you have to do is to be able to show the rooftops are going in, because that's what commercial developers look for. Are there going to be the houses there? Are there going to be the people there to support our demographic criteria for locating in that particular area? And I can tell you that we have single-family houses going up everywhere. Yes, most of them are north of I-10, and one of the reasons for that is because that's the area where you're out of the flood zone, you're out of the wind zone, and so people are looking for an area where they can get affordable insurance, get more house for their money and more land for their money. So that's happening also. We have a number of projects that are under review. I won't get into those right now. Of course, the biggest thing that was the great news right now is what's going to happen on the Broadwater. I can tell you that so far we have not received any plans or applications yet, but I would expect that would start happening very soon. So with that, I'll stop talking and would entertain any questions that you might have. Yes, ma'am.
When
when you, and if you would repeat her question.
Okay.
Once she remembers.
No, I remember it, I just wanted to phrase it correctly. I want a little clarification on this thing about that, because the fact of the matter was, you went in and got approval for 48 short-term rentals. I want to know how that sets a precedent for the city going forward for short-term rentals. Secondarily, I know that that was, somebody's electricity's finding. And the second half of the question is, he's been unable to get this community business transition from an RF30 current. So, I guess the question is, what happens? I think like a lot of us would be like less objectionary to something that was less than 48 rental units. Because that's the whole building.
Okay.
So I think, I just want to make it clear publicly that that's the problem.
Okay,
Okay, so just taking that back with you.
I can respond to that. Okay. Mr. Zhang has had two pieces of property on Briarfield. He had one on the east side and one on the west side. He came in and he went through the process. Let me back up. He presented plans to us to build a 30-unit apartment complex. We reviewed it as a 30-unit apartment complex. It went through the process. He got a permit. He went out and built it. When it was on the verge of being completed, I got a call from a real estate agent who asked, would short-term rental be allowed on that property? And I said, well, it would be allowed as a conditional use, meaning that he would have to go to the Planning Commission and the City Council and get approval for it. So that's what he did. When the apartments were probably 98% complete, he went back and filed an application to go through, and he got approval to do short-term rental in those 30 units that are on the east side. After those were finished, he came back in and wanted to do short-term rental on the other side, which it's also zoned RM30, which would allow it as a conditional use. Well, it went through the Planning Commission and got approved, but when it got to the City Council, it was suggested that we really didn't need to do these anymore. Both the fire chief and I brought it to the attention of the council that building an apartment complex and then turning around and using it for short-term rental is not appropriate, because you're not building it to the commercial standards that a hotel, you're essentially building a hotel but not calling it a hotel. And that if we're going to do that, then it needs to start out from the very beginning. It needs to have the right zoning. It needs to be designed as a hotel. It needs to be built as a hotel. So the City Council sent it back to the applicant and told him that, no, we need to, if you're going to do this, you need to change the zoning on it. So he came back in and made an application to change the zoning from RM30 to CB, community business, which would allow a hotel as a use by right. That zoning change recommendation was denied. That's what I mentioned before. It was denied by the Planning Commission. And of course, they're just a recommendation body. They have the public hearing. They hear the arguments for and against, and then they vote to make a recommendation to the City Council. So that is the case that's going to come up at one of the next City Council meetings, to consider the Planning Commission's recommendation to deny that request for a zoning change. Now, Mr. Zhang has some other issues too that I don't know how he's going to get around, and I'll try not to be too technical about this, but our fire code requires that whenever you do a commercial development, you have to have 2 remote ingresses and egresses to allow the fire department to either get in on this side of the property or that side of the property. And the way that it's calculated is, let's just say that it's a long rectangular piece of property. What you do is you take the diagonal measurement from one corner to the opposite corner on the other end, and the fire code says that those ingresses and egresses have to be at least half of whatever that diagonal dimension is apart in order to comply with the fire code. Let's just say that it was 1,200 feet from one corner to the other. That means that those two entrances and exits have to be at least 600 feet apart from each other in order to be code compliant. He doesn't have the room for that. He has a small frontage on Briarfield where there's no way that he can comply with that part of that section of the fire code. So he called me about it, and I said, you're either going to have to get an easement from somebody where it meets that dimension, or you're just going to have to acquire more property for it. So even if he were to get approval for the zoning change, he's still got some other obstacles that he's got to overcome as this goes through. We don't know what will happen with the zoning change. That's in the council's hands. But it will be, if you'll watch it, will be brought up at one of the next meetings. Now, he does have 48 units in what's being proposed. We made it clear, the fire chief and I made it clear to the city council and the administration that because of what he's proposing, let's just say that this does get approved, then we would review those plans just like we would a hotel. In other words, it would absolutely have to meet all the code requirements for a hotel. It would have to have all the exit lights, the emergency lighting, everything else that a hotel would require, because you know, you probably heard this before, and we hear this a lot. People will come in and say, well, it's not really going to be that. But in the world of zoning, you know, if it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck, we call it a duck until somebody gives us a good reason not to. So in this case, what he's doing is he's proposing to build a hotel, even though it's designed like apartments, but we would review it, consider it, and make recommendations based on the fact that we consider it a hotel. So that I hope that answers the questions about it.
Yeah, well, I mean, my question was more to the extent of, is that going to be like a new city position? If somebody comes in and they're building a big new building, and they're going to approve a huge amount of units automatically because the precedent's been set to approve 48 short-term rentals. If this stays out on 30, he technically could build this apartment, say it, and then go back and say, I have 48, and give you approval for it.
Well, I mean, he could make that argument. I think one thing that probably would diffuse that argument is the fact that he had already built the apartments when they came in to ask for it. Now, I don't have the authority to deny somebody submitting an application. When they come in, all I can do is tell them, you know, yes, the code does allow it, but you've got to go through the process. I can't just turn it down flat. So when he came in to file this application, I made him aware of the way that we would look at this, but he went ahead and filed the application anyway, and he's going through the process. So once we put it into the process, then we don't have a vote. So it goes to Planning Commission and City Council, and it's up to them. So. But
how does that prevent him then from coming back across the street and saying, I want all 30 of these to be? Even though it's only been code for 4 or 6, like nobody can see clearly on that number. What prevents him from coming back and getting all 30 of those to be approved?
Actually, he was approved for all 30. We went back and pulled the file on it, and his presentation said 30, and he was approved for 30. Okay, the question is, what happens with a conditional use? Do they have to come in and renew it every year, or does it just extend on? When someone comes in and gets approval for a conditional use permit, and they agree to meet the conditions that are put on the project, then that conditional use permit is approved from that point forward, unless a couple of things. Number one, if they sell the property, then the conditional use continues with the property. So the new owner does not have to come in and go through the conditional use process over. Now, let's say that we have a project where they're given a conditional use permit and they understand what they're supposed to be doing, and they fail to comply with those conditions that were on there, whether it be immediately or 6 months down the road or a year down the road. Because it's a conditional use permit, that gives me the authority to go back and point out that violation to the Planning Commission and to the City Council. And they can conduct public hearings for the purpose of revoking that permit. Now, what they would normally do is give them 30 days to correct whatever it is. But if the owner fails to correct whatever the violation is of the conditional use permit, then the Planning Commission can make a recommendation to the City Council. The City Council has the authority to revoke that conditional use permit. So in this particular case, if the owner of this 30 units violates some of the conditions on the property and won't correct them, then we can go to the Planning Commission and the Council to have his conditional use permit revoked.
Well, I can probably go argue with that because I have to know several meetings surrounding this, and it has always been restricted after. So I don't know where that's coming from now, but it was agreed upon and mentioned by you in several meetings, including the most recent one, that it was only approved for 4 units.
Yep.
So I'm struggling with how this became 30 units.
I'll show you the minutes of the meeting. I'm not sure where I got the idea that it was 4. I honestly thought that it was, yes, I honestly thought that it was 4 when I made that statement. But when I questioned it and went back after that meeting where that came up that day, I went back and looked at the file, and all of the discussion and everything else in there said all 30 units. So I apologize for the confusion. Yes, ma'am.
You built that as an apartment, and then you changed it over to short-term rental. And then you're saying that you build these other ones, they have to go by the standards of a hotel. So short-term rental is the same as a hotel.
I'm sorry?
The short-term rental is the same as a hotel. So when you build the apartments, so what kind of standards a building doesn't have with the apartment, that he doesn't have with the apartment, then he would have with a hotel.
Well,
Safety issues.
okay.
Fire and all that.
Yeah, the question is, what are the differences between the apartments that he built that have been approved for short-term rental and a hotel? And there are a number of differences. When you have an apartment building, there is an assumption that you're going to have tenants in there who are living there on a longer than temporary basis, so that they would know where the exits are, that they would know that the building is sprinklered. They would have that kind of in-depth knowledge that a person in a hotel wouldn't have that was staying there for 3 or 4 days. So the first one got approved. The apartments that he's got there now got approved. It went through the process at the end and was approved. We wanted to make sure that that didn't happen again, and that's why the fire chief and I took a firm stand that here's the way that we're going to handle this. We've learned a lot about short-term rental as we've gone through this. And let me just tell you, short-term rental is not something that's going away. I mean, this is worldwide. Even the VRBO people and the Airbnb people tell us, do y'all really think y'all are going to regulate something like this? This is not going away. But what we're doing is we're trying to put restrictions in the ordinance so that we can regulate it as best we can to respond to the council's questions and the administration's questions. One of the things we want to do is to be able to know what type of revenues to expect. That's one of the reasons we're trying to make sure that they're paying the taxes that they're supposed to be paying.
When they build it one way and then they're using it for so many of them.
Yes, ma'am.
That if there's not a certain regulation, can't you, when you change them to short-term rentals, you can make them do a few things for safety?
Oh.
If they have a fire or something, it's gonna affect a lot of people.
Some of the things that we would not be able to do is go back in and make them tear out all the walls in there, for example, because in a hotel, when you're putting in the electrical, you have to encase those electrical wiring in either metal-clad conduit or rigid conduit. which is a significant expense. So in order for us to have done that with the other apartments, he would have literally had to go back into a structure that was 98% complete and just tore everything back out except the framing and started all over again. So, but we learned from that, and we're applying that knowledge now to anything new that comes in. Let's just real quick, every individual short-term rental that comes to the city of Biloxi, we conduct 2 inspections. The fire department goes out and inspects it before they get a certificate of occupancy, and our building inspector goes out and inspects it to make sure that there are no life safety issues. Remember too, we've had a lot of existing buildings around town where the people just converted over to short-term rental. And so we weren't able to go back in, and look inside those walls or anything else. But everything that we're learning as we go through this short-term rental process, we're applying to the future units that come in, the future applications that come in. So
So it would be a big burden on the city to go into these properties to change. Every once in a while, we check, make sure everything's doing.
no, okay. The question is, would it put a burden on the city to go in and do it? Let me tell you a few things. Once they become a short-term rental and they're approved for a certificate of occupancy, they go on the fire department's annual inspection list. So they get inspected once a year. Every year they go in and inspect it to make sure that they haven't changed anything or they're not doing anything. We also, when the license is pulled, we also issue an occupant limit card. We had some complaints during one of the spring break events where there was an apartment for short-term rental and there were 20 people in there. Well, yes, ma'am. What we do now is we issue an occupant limit card that says that based on the square footage and the number of exits out of here, this place is limited to 5 people. So in the event that somebody overloads one of those places, the fire department, the police department have the right to go in and shut them down. Any other questions? Yes.
What makes the temporary occupancy, what makes the occupancy certificate temporary, like in the hotel legends, and when does that become permanent? What is, you mentioned the occupancy dealing with safety on short-term rental.
Okay.
What's missing in that hotel that's open?
Okay.
What's not been done?
There are a couple of things that they have to do. They had to replace a couple of pressure reducing valves on floor 1 and 2, which they're doing. It was not considered, a life safety issue. There were 1 or 2 other things, some things on the fire department's list, but we determined that, that they were not life safety issues. And we issued temporary certificates of occupancy all the time if there are some certain things that need to be finished or corrected. So, I'm sorry? Yes, 60 on the Legends Hotel. It's 60 days, and we'll make sure we'll stay on top of them, make sure they complete those. Anything else? Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Creel. Sherry, you have 26 seconds left.
That's fine with me.
If you would, you have 2 topics to cover. Sherry Bell is the Director of Parks and Recreation, and she'll give you updates on these 2 items.
Yes, I'm not only going to talk about the Snyder repairs that we've done and are continuing to do, but also what is offered here. The repairs that we've made so far is we replaced the chiller, we have the new fencing, we've done a lot of extensive work to the pools, we've resurfaced the gutters on both of the pools, we've installed new grading, new piping in the mechanical room, and then we've also redone the plasters on the pool bottoms and all. 2 of the things that we still have left to do, and I think you'll be surprised, is we're replacing the multi-room doors and the multi-room doors, so to say, in the meeting rooms upstairs. This building is 19 years old, so it has some maintenance that needs to be done. And then we also are going to be looking at painting the inside of the building and the outside of the building. What we offer here at Snyder is you are able to rent this multi-room, the gym, and the meeting room. So we do offer that, and that's available through my office. We offer exercise class for seniors on Mondays and Wednesdays. We offer Tai Chi on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Pickleball is played here, as well as Pops Ferry courts. The pool is open from 6 a.m. to 12. And then I don't know how many of you know, there's a little library out there as you're exiting. It's take one, give one as far as books. So y'all make sure that y'all go and be a part of that. There's plenty of books in there right now. So, and we're continuing to take Sports Hall of Fame applications till October 20th. So if you're interested, I can get you those forms. The banquet will be December 13th at the Civic. Pennzoil Park playground equipment, it's probably 20 years old. We've got to get it replaced. I do want to thank Vincent. Where'd Vincent go? He done left out again. I call all my parks neighborhood parks because somebody in that neighborhood's always telling me what's going on and what needs to be repaired, and he's one of them, and I do appreciate that. Right now, we are having some electrical issues with the lights out there. We have some burnt up wires and some chewed wires from the squirrels, so to say. If any of you all have ideas for fundraising for a new playground, please let me know. I can go and I am going to pursue some grants, but you always got to have that matching funds. So, but anyway, come through Snyder, enjoy yourselves. I think there's a senior calendar out there that tells you the times of what's going on here. So, thank you.
Any questions of Ms. Bell? One thing that I do, it struck me when you were speaking, Sherry, when we approved this year's budget, that did not include money for summer camp. Typically, the city sponsored camp in the summer for parents who are working, so that their children have someplace to go Monday through Friday during the summer. And this year, given the budget constraints, as Mr. Leonard pointed out, and putting this year's budget together, that was not included in the budget. If the revenues are up or what we anticipate them to be, I have no doubt that would be placed back in the budget. But we'll have a better idea about that in January or February.
COVID is an issue with kids and putting them so close
And the COVID issue. Okay, thank you. I just wanted to mention that. Thank you, Sherry. Next before you is Christy Labata, good French name. She's I guess you oversee the engineering department. So if something's broken, she should be able to fix it. Should be able to. Thank you, Christy.
All right, I have a couple projects I'm going to update y'all on. We're going to start with the Potts Ferry Road Extension project, which is actually the first two things on this list. We're still in the process of acquiring right-of-way for that project. This is the portion of the Potts Ferry Road that goes between Pass Road south to Highway 90. We have enough money to acquire all the right-of-way. We are still working on getting enough money to finish the construction. We've been applying for lots of grants, that kind of stuff, to finish that. This is also part of the larger project of the new Potts Ferry Bridge that Mike Leonard talked about when he was first up here. But right now we got the Oakmont Place demolitions fixing to start, which are some of the houses are going to have to come down in anticipation of this project. We have 6 of those that are ready to, we've put out to bid, we've got prices that probably will be starting within the next month, I would think. We found out we got our contract signed on Friday. I found that out today, Dr. Tisdale, he was asking. So we're just waiting for that contractor to gear up. Should be starting here in the next few weeks. He started today? Did he start today? Okay. I know, right? Like, because he just signed his contracts on Friday. Yeah. Yeah. He's supposed to have, I think, 30 days to finish. We will be adding, there are 3 more houses that we have to add to his contract, so it probably will take longer than 30 days. Those houses were not ready when the project went out to bid. We had to wait for people to get out of them and do some asbestos testing. So it will take probably a little bit longer than 30 days because we have a few houses to add to it. Next on my list is Churchill ditch improvement. We had a very, I think, successful neighborhood meeting over there. Looked at the ditch with the neighbors, came to the conclusion that we're just going to leave it alone for now, with the exception of a couple areas that we're going to put some riprap. And we're going to do, we have one fence that is being, erosion is happening on the ditch side, exposing their, the foundations of their fence posts and stuff like that. So we're going to do a little bit of concrete work there, but other than that, right now, we're just going to kind of let it be and see how it works. We had just recently done a repair on the Keesler gas main easement that crosses that ditch. Had a very large sinkhole formed there. When we originally talked with Dr. Tisdale about doing this project, that section was not included because it's very difficult for Keesler to allow us to dig around their high pressure force main, gas force main. When that sinkhole happened, it was an opportune time. We had to go in and make an emergency repair anyway, so we actually were able to fix that section of pipe, which, as it turns out, we think was causing a lot of the flooding in that ditch. So we're hoping that that all solved itself. We're going to watch it over time. As the big storms, I always call Dr. Tisdale and say, can you go run over there real quick and see what it looks like when it's raining for me? So that was good. Good meeting with the neighbors. We can do some riprap work and kind of let that one sit. And last, we have the Sanger Theater. As y'all all know, we're working on finally renovating the Sanger. We are working on the exterior right now and the roof. We have taken down the entire fly tower, replaced the roof structure in it, put it back on, literally took it down brick by brick. We have replaced the roof itself, ended up having to replace a few of the structural members in the roof, put new HVAC equipment up on the roof. While we were up there, we didn't want to have to come back later and cut holes in our brand new roof to replace the HVAC, so we went ahead and did all that, so the exterior HVAC stuff is up to date. We found a few more places that are leaking. We're working on getting those fixed, and we are getting another grant, which is going to help fix the bricks. With the money that we have set aside now, it's not enough money to repoint the bricks and to stop them from the water from infiltrating through the bricks into the building. But we have a grant coming, and that's going to take care of that. After that, we are starting, the mayor actually just asked me to get under contract repairs to the front facade. So we haven't looked at it. We haven't decided what changes are going to be made. I don't imagine it'll be much, just kind of updating it. I think it's a green color right now, which I didn't even realize, so the mayor asked me to get rid of the green. But that's going to be the next step in the Sanger Theater. And that's all I have. If anybody has any questions for me. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I had said something about where, on Pine Road, where they had the southernmost part where they had filled in. I noticed this stuff.
We have, yes, you're right. We, Dr. Tisdale emailed me those pictures, and we are keeping an eye on it. In Pine Grove, we had just done some drainage repairs in Pine Grove. We did some spot repairs. The drainage pipe there it was not probably installed correctly when it was originally put in. It's a HDPE. It's a very soft pipe, and it's failed in a lot of places. So we went in and did some kind of point repairs between manhole to manhole, and we now have another spot popping up. So Dr. Tisdale did let me know. We're keeping an eye on that to see how it goes, and we'll try to get that fixed. We're going to try to get as much as that. I wish we had enough money to go in and fix everything at once, but yes. Yeah. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Christy. Next, we have Major Ron Lesnar, man about town for the Biloxi Police Department. Chief Miller could not be here tonight, and he has some support staff with him, and you may want to introduce who they are, Ronnie.
Yes.
Since they made time to come down, and then you have a couple of items just to report on. Thank you.
No problem. So Chief Miller regrettably couldn't be here this afternoon, so he sent me instead. Today I have Captain Houseman, who just handled cruising the coast and did a fantastic job with the limited manpower he had. We've got Sergeant Shane here. He's going to he's going to give you some information about the camera program we have going on that we're still pushing. So Officer Sabio in the back, hopefully he'll carry me away from all this. All right, so the event, let's just take Cruising the Coast real quick. So Cruising the Coast was quite the challenge for us this year. We had prepared for a storm, and I had to cancel a whole lot of extra manpower we normally bring in. We bring in outside people every time we have these big events like this to help mitigate some of the traffic inside the neighborhoods. I had to cancel them because the vast majority of them either worked in George County and they were concerned about their own hurricane stuff, or in Jackson, where we all know the storm was headed to. So I had to cancel all of that, and then we had to take some extra manpower and do some magic and all that kind of stuff, and Captain Houseman was able to carry everything all the way home, and he did a really good job with what little bit of resources we had for him. So hats off to you, Milton, on that one. My items here are speeding. Speeding in Briarfield subdivision. I also have a complaint on Channel Mark as well, because we've been dealing with the COVID stuff, and at one point in time we literally had 7 officers out with the virus, and we've actually had 2 guys out with some serious surgery. So as my manpower comes back up online, we'll be addressing these issues inside of the neighborhoods. So people have asked for us, and this is not an uncommon thing, that when a police officer stops somebody, it is literally the person who called to complain. So be careful with that, please. Another issue that we have, and this is going to be an ongoing problem for many years until somebody sits down and figures this all out, and that is going to be the homeless population that we have around Biloxi. In the past, we've had some nonprofit groups help us with bus passes to wherever they wanted to go back to, or wherever. There's been a couple of nonprofits that help us rent apartments for these people until they can get up on their feet, or whatever the case may be. And then there are some who just don't want the responsibilities of taking care of a house, working a job, all that kind of stuff that comes with it. So they live where they live, and they do what they do. I think we have curbed a whole lot of the panhandling in the open road. It's still going to happen. It's still going to happen. But my officers are pretty diligent about dealing with that, especially with the COVID stuff. We don't want anybody passing anything they don't have to pass. We've got a little help from the city court system on some of the sentencing guidelines that we got going on some of these scenarios. Not that we're not targeting anybody at any rate. Some people just need to go to jail because they can't control themselves, and that's what it pretty much boils down to it. Yeah, so we're doing what we can with what we got. Once again, I'm fairly confident in the next 3 weeks we'll be back up to full strength. I'll have all my manpower back, and we'll be able to sit down and work out another plan.
If you would, with the Broadwater for sale, moving the homeless out of there, a lot of them are moving west.
Yeah.
If you'd address that.
Yeah. All right, so the old Broadwater golf course is being sold. We hope it's all going to come through. I think that's going to be a big boom to our economy. At any rate, so the homeless have taken up residency there, and the owner, Cotton 4 at the time, allows them to be there. And to a degree, it kind of works to our advantage because we know where they are. You know, if somebody needs something or somebody's complaining about something, we can go find what we need to find out there where they are. Yeah. So now that the property is being sold, I would imagine there's going to be a whole lot of shifting of personnel or homelessness one way or the other. I'm inclined to believe that they're going to have to go further west because the east side of town is inundated with things, and we have quite a lot of property owners that ask for our help, and in turn we ask them for a consent to make arrests on their property if it needs to be done to clear the property and clear the roadways up. I know that today we had a complaint about a couple of homeless people moving on the old golf course. What was the name of that one? Yeah, Edgewater Estates. They had that big grassy thing, and we cleaned that out once before, probably about 4 years ago, and hadn't had any problems since. But evidently, the people from the Broadwater property are going to migrate over that way. We're going to address that again, just like we did before. I'm going to find out who the actual property owner is again. That's where Shane will come into this, because he does all that intel stuff now. He'll be able to tell me who the property owner is, and we'll be able to address them, see what they want to do with it. Yeah, probably. I'm sorry?
It's the same one, the same owner.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. Mr. Ford owns quite a lot of property around the state of Mississippi. My understanding, he owns like 1 million acres. So, but I do know that there are some other people that are involved in that as well. Remember the formal War was their name? W-A-R-R? Yeah, anyway, so there are other people that are involved in it that we can find and get some help from them. Sometimes the city of Biloxi and Cotton Ford don't quite see eye to eye on everything. So we'll address it the best way we can and use whatever kind of resources we have to move them along. And part of those resources is a camera program that we got going on. And we pushed this quite a lot because it has came back to help us. Unfortunately, we had 2 people die in an automobile accident Saturday night. It was a horrible scene, but some of the videos that we have will probably clear up some of the issues or some of the concerns that we had about speed and things of that nature, because that's always important. The family by rights will want to know what happened. We have my traffic unit is trained to reconstruct these accidents, so sometimes the video that we acquire helps support their theories and their formulas. So does anybody have any questions for me before I turn this over to Shane? So Sergeant Steele is going to explain to you how this Project NOLA system works.
I'm Shane Steele. I'm with the Intel Division at the Police Department. We made flyers about your area, the Ward 5. They're over here on the counter. I would like for you to get them before you leave, because it has your crime stats right here, so you can go to this link here and pull them up for you so you can see them in real time and as they change throughout the thing. Also on the back is the information about our crime camera program. I'm going to be quick because I know we're trying to get out of here. There's a link right here at the bottom in blue on the papers that talks about a registry campaign that the City of Biloxi Police Department and a company called Fusus has gotten together to do. I'm sure we all have security cameras on our house, and when the accidents and incidents that happen, you have police officers knock on your door asking you, can we view your video? Well, how they got to your house, they drove around in a circle and looked up at your house and saw you had a camera. That's really time consuming, and information can be lost, or we have to keep coming back to find the owner's information, that kind of stuff. This registry here, this information, with this link here, you can come to this website and you can put your information on this link. It's only one that will see it is the police department. Nobody else will see it. It's just your information, your personal information about what cameras you have, what they look at, and how we can get a hold of you. And when we get a hold of you, you don't have to give us permission at that time. You can say, I don't want you at this time. You can refuse. But this gives us an avenue to look at when things happen, so we can look at, these cameras are going to pop up on a map that we have at a station, so I can see what cameras are registered in the area, so I can go right to those to go ask for video. These aren't live feeds. We don't have a live view into your feeds. This is just knowing that the cameras are there. Fusus also has another program for businesses that can be with live feeds. It's about the size of a hard drive that plugs into their DVRs and can put it on the internet. That's all encrypted and would come just to us. That's a whole other thing. If you want to talk to me about it later, I can talk about cameras all day. But like I said, this talks about our crime cameras, the Fusus system, and they're all in the blue links. If you have any questions, just contact us down here. Any questions? It's right there in blue, just the registry. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Sergeant Steele. Appreciate that. Thank you, Major Lesnar. Just a couple of things to wrap up. What occurs to me as a practical use for these cameras is if you're in West Biloxi, Edgewater Estates, Edgewater Park, if the homeless are moving from the old Broadwater property west, I mean, I'm already getting complaints that people are ringing my doorbell and then there's nobody there, or I ask who is it, they tell me they need help. I don't know who this person is, but I know they're cutting through yards living out in the woods behind my house. So, I mean, if you have a camera, that can certainly help in helping to identify some of these folks. I will say the police department just does a great job in dealing with the homeless, but the problem's not going to disappear. I think the city can manage it better if some things happen. And one thing that really needs to happen is somebody has to gain control of a nice piece of property so that, in my opinion, an assessment and transition center could be constructed to link up the homeless, those that want help, with resources. And there's a nonprofit organization, the Open Doors Coalition, that just does excellent work in that regard. But anyway, that's one way cameras can help with this particular situation if you don't feel safe in your neighborhood, because as the homeless move west, they're in your neighborhood or in your backyard. Just a reminder, if you picked up one of the handouts on the table of the agenda, on the back of that, not on mine, but on the back of yours, you've got the water rates when they start, the new rates increase. That's October 1st of every year. Also, on the side with the agenda, it notes the garbage fee increases October 1st. That's a 30-cent increase a month. You've got, the reason I mentioned the citizen representative, a lot of you will send me a picture and say, this drainage, this drain needs to be cleared out on my street, water backs up. I go out, I take a picture of it. Craig Ross is who I email it to. So if you can't get me, or you don't want to deal with me, you can take a picture of the drain and send it to Craig. I'm happy to come out though and take that picture. I'm usually out and about anyway. The next ward meeting, typically we have it the last of February or the first part in March. It's about 4 or 5 weeks before spring break, because that's, spring break and cruising. That's pretty much the pattern here for Ward 5 meetings. Any questions of me? Yes, ma'am. You said you're still celebrating the railroad crossing at Eisenhower being repaired, and have you invited any of us present to help you celebrate? Thank you, Sharon. No, it took a while to do that, I tell you, and I appreciate the city taking the time to get that done, providing the muscle power to get it done. All right, go Saints. Have a nice evening. Thank you for coming. It will be up by noon tomorrow. Okay, Biloxi, #1.